and Sundar a quick introduction. Peter Miscovich with JLL is Managing Director, Strategy and Innovation Consulting. He has 26 years experience, and he's based in New York. He's responsible for corporate strategy, consulting, and client relationship development. Peter develops integrated solutions that support workplace innovation and transformational change. His primary focus is upon how new and emerging technologies will enable greater operational efficiency, improve workplace performance, and enhance innovation and create more sustainable urban centers. And Sundar is also with JLL as America's lead consulting with JLL. He helps organizations create future-focused, agile strategies, help them thrive in today's world of constant transformation, disruption, and uncertainty. He has nearly 25 years of experience as a change agent on behalf of Fortune 500 companies in many industries, with a focus on corporate real estate strategy, workplace productivity, process improvement design, workplace transformation, technology transformation, workplace continuity, disaster recovery, and change management. And I know Peter and Sundar have worked together, known each other for a long time. So I will turn it over to you guys, and thanks again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction, Matt, and welcome everyone to the webinar today. We are really excited to be here, and it's looking at the number of participants, a good discussion. I'm hoping after our initial slide presentation. Next slide, please, Peter. Many companies have a disaster recovery business continuity plan as part of their overall crisis management and risk management. This is at an enterprise level. It is important to understand what each of these functions are because of the COVID situation and the prolonged COVID situation, these are becoming more important than we typically see when a crisis management, risk management is triggered during, say, like a flood or a earthquake or a hurricane, whatever that the case may be. So typically what happens is when a disastrous event happens, there are protocols where a company declares a crisis and the crisis management is triggered. And when that happens, the crisis management team that comes together is responsible for the overall coordination of all activities response during the crisis. And let's say, think about it as a flood or a business disruption like a system outage, or there is earthquake or whatever that may be, any business disruption, the first order of business for the crisis management is declare crisis, onboard the team, but first is to get the business, day-to-day part of the business going as soon as possible. So think of it as if you were to go to a bank and the system was out, they could manually take deposits until the system is recovered, and then they can catch up and recover back to normal. That is what a typical crisis management business continuity to take care of the day-to-day and recover to the old state of a normal business as usual function. And this concept is important because as we start to talk about what is happening in the context of COVID, these fundamental understanding or common understanding amongst us is necessary and important. Next slide, Peter. So typically what happens in a crisis management and the team that is formed, they will have a designated, pretty high level in the organization, person that has execution authority put in as a crisis manager, and they will run this almost like a project, if you will. So there is a program manager, and there are representatives from the business, from finance, from HR, IT, real estate, risk and compliance. You need good communication, therefore communication, there could be legal issues that you need to take care of, and how do you protect your supply chain during a during a crisis, during any business interruption. They, in turn, if you see to the bottom left side of it on the business continuity plan, they will set up specific task force to take care of specific tasks to address the day-to-day continuity of the business. It could be, in some cases, a workaround, and in some cases, it could be they decide not to do something, whatever that may be, but that is the business continuity plan, and that is an interim program. And eventually, once the event has subsided or we have passed the event, they will recover, which is onto the bottom right side. That is the recovery plan. How do I get back to business as usual? In this case, because the COVID situation is not a event in like a one-day event, the business continuity has prolonged for so long. Chances are the recovery is not going to be back to what it was January 2020. It is going to be, we all know, in some way, shape, or form different. There is a recent survey from the World Economic Forum that said only 17% of companies around the world are probably not thinking about reimagining their business model. So when the business model changes, everything underneath it has to change. Therefore, we have to reimagine what the future business will be, and we will recover not back to the old, but to the new. If you go to the next slide, Peter, what we are talking about specifically is the workplace continuity as part of this overall structure we talked about, from a crisis management, business continuity plan, and a disaster recovery. What is the workplace? It could be an office, it could be a manufacturing site, it could be retail site, it could be, all of those are workplaces. And what is the continuity plan during the business continuity and to the recovery during this crisis for these real estate assets? That is the focus of workplace continuity. If you go to the next slide, Peter. So how is COVID crisis different from other crises that companies were prepared for? So when you looked at their business continuity plan, not many of them actually envisioned and were prepared for a COVID pandemic situation. And why is it different? One, it has no geographic center. If it had a geographic center, such as there was Hurricane Katrina, then we moved operations to another geography. Or when there was 9/11, we moved it from New York to other areas. When there were hurricanes in Florida, you could move operations from Florida to somewhere else. But because it has no geographic center and it impacted the entire world came to a position where they had to deal with this crisis. The other aspect of it is this has a human-to-human transmission, a spread of an infectious disease that goes from human to human. That makes it very difficult to set up a second location, a third location where people can congregate or come together to do their work. And the fact that this is dynamically shifting, we really don't know what this virus is yet. There are various reports as to what is not. So therefore, the dynamic nature of it requires a more agile, continuous, ongoing crisis management. Next slide, please. So from a work standpoint, let's understand the dynamics that we have here. There is no pharmaceutical intervention here. We do not have a medicine. We don't have a cure. We don't have a vaccination, at least not yet. Up until that time, the shelter in place, social distancing, all those that we now know, these were new terms a couple of months ago. Now this is part of our life. These are only suppression strategies. These are not cure strategies. And while we are going through this suppression strategy, the entire country, entire world has done a reasonably good job in bringing the number of cases down. And almost to the point now we're talking about re-entry. Many businesses are coming back. Jurisdictions are opening up their businesses in their jurisdiction. However, because we don't have a pharmaceutical intervention yet, there is still a possibility that if the cases were to go up, there will be further relaxation or further lockdown, and then wait for the cases to come down. And the complexity here is region by region, depending on the capability of the healthcare system, the capacity of the healthcare system in each of these regions, they may go into lockdown and relaxation at different times. And ultimately, what everyone at an individual level, company level, governmental level, the decision here is, how do we strike the right balance between health and economics? And that is the balance that we're all looking to strike. And that is the dynamic that we have to understand as we make decisions in this response to COVID. Next slide. So as we start to reimagine the new world, some of the suppression strategies have taught us a few things that we didn't know in the past. One of the things we're beginning to hear, even pre-COVID, we used to talk about fourth industrial revolution, digitization of everything, the whole digital revolution that is going to come upon us, artificial intelligence, robotics, all of those questions were already there. COVID has accelerated that conversation. There are more and more companies that have already adapted by going more digital or changing their business models in a way that they can manage to keep the economics and the health of their employees in consideration and keep their businesses going. So the future will be at a point where it will be nice if we could reimagine a new world where economic and health don't have to be in tension with each other. They could coexist. It could be in harmony. That is the idea that we all should be looking forward to. Next slide. Early on, when the COVID situation hit us, companies tried to keep their environment safe by increased cleaning. All of that happened, but once it was declared a pandemic, it was quite a shock because it came upon us very quickly, and there was a realization that this is much bigger than we initially thought. We're not coming back next week. There's going to be shelter in place for a while. So our team, Peter and I, we put together this chart to get our thoughts organized for the most part, so that we are able to understand what is going on with a lot of great ideas. How do we respond to, what will the future look like? All of that to organize our thoughts in a way that is short-term, immediate, long-term, all of that. We came up with this chart. And if you look at the red piece of it was the early part of our respond. The gray, which is the dip there, those were the adaptations we did. We came up with workarounds. Every company did. And there was some productivity drop. In some cases, the productivity was fine. In some cases, they're actually saying there was productivity gain. However, most companies realize this is not the long term. So as the number of cases started to come down, companies are looking to re-enter. And eventually, once all of this is behind us, we will have to either in some cases there may not be a vaccine at all, but we will figure out a way to live with it, like other coronaviruses like the SARS and MERS, or we find a vaccine like we have found for a lot of other diseases. We will come back to normal one day, but the idea is to start to think about what is that normal. We are encouraging our clients to start to think about what that reimagine will be, because without it, people are coming up with best guess statements. We have heard in the news there are companies that are saying we don't need real estate anymore. Before leaders can go ahead and say stuff, it will be important for them to think about and put some thought process and have a point of view of what that reimagination is. That way it is not one opinion versus another. It's an informed, educated opinion as to what that reimagination will be. Then we will implement those reimagine and flourish, and that will be our new normal. Next slide, please. So when we talk about re-enter, how do we make the decision as to how to come back? And in many cases, it is going to be not just one entity making a decision. It is going to be in this order. First, the government, the authorities in that jurisdiction have to lift the shelter in place. They have to open up the economy for reentry to happen. Next, the landlord should be ready to open the building, and they have to take certain responsibilities that the tenant would expect them to provide certain level of comfort that the building is safe. As an example, if the elevator has not been inspected during this COVID time, that certification needs to be done. And in many Asia-Pac countries where we are providing services to our clients there, the governments have required the landlords to recertify that their buildings are safe for occupants to come back. So the landlord needs to be ready, and the company has to make its decision. It has to decide who they invite first, how many people will be on a floor safely, how will they operate when they are in that building on a floor, all of those, how much of cleaning will they do, all of those the company will do, and all this for the final decider, the employee, to ultimately decide that he or she is confident and feels safe enough and has overcome the fear to re-enter the building. And the landlord, the government, and the company together in everything that they do have to focus on how do we provide comfort and let the individual employee overcome the fear of risking their health. That way they can re-enter and come back to the office. Next slide, please, Peter. So how do we think about re-entry, and what are the themes that we are finding? One is corporate real estate is an integral part of the enterprise crisis management. So as you can imagine, just because the building is open, you got to make sure the security is in place, HR is in place. HR has the right policies for it. The technology is aligned. The business processes, if they have to be different now, those are in place. So it is an orchestration across multiple functions run by the crisis management, and corporate real estate is one of the many functions within the enterprise crisis management. While companies are anxious to bring employees back, the employee and the community's health, they have to take into account. They also have to take into account company's reputation if you bring people too soon. And if there are cases, positive cases because of that, we have had some companies where employees have taken companies to court for exposing their employees. So people have to be careful to protect their company's reputation, but at the same time, they also have a responsibility to keep the company's economics and the operation of the company going, one for themselves, for the employee, and for the country's economics also, because the sooner they can get back into business, we can protect against the significant unemployment that we're beginning to see right now. The best practices we are recommending is to start to consider what the reimagination will be while the focus is also on reentry. And in a way, we are even recommending that be a separate team from the day-to-day reentry practice, because reentry is a very intense effort to bring people back to the office, and you want to be thinking about reimagination, and that is big time effort as well. So having them as two separate teams, that will help. The reimagination is also, it is not a one size fits all, and the perceptions are changing almost week to week, month to month. Perceptions are changing. So it's an introspective learning process rather than, hey, tell me what my before and after will look like consultant. It is not how that works. And the solutions are different based on different companies, their infrastructure, their willingness from a risk perspective, all of that, and the type of industry they are in. So we are recommending that be led to the solution rather than lead with assumptions, because assumptions can be changing. You want to build this as a consensus across the organization and build it together, not only with corporate real estate, but also other parts of the business. Next slide, please. So we have been having conversations across all of our clients in Asia, in the Americas, in Europe, and there are about 15 to 16 questions that you can broadly bucket all the questions that they're asking. It is, how will my business model has changed? So what happens to my business? What happens to real estate? My business continuity in the future has to be resilient towards a lot of other disruptions. So how will my business continuity change? What does human experience mean in the new world when people are working from home for most of, for 3, 4, 5 months? When they come back, if not all of them come back, what does that mean for people that are working from home? What does human experience mean? Will my portfolio be small or big, or will it remain the same? All of these we have now put as a ecosystem or interrelated questions, really. You got to answer all of these to get to the reimagined future. Because you touch one, it impacts the other. Therefore, while these may be the first questions our clients ask, we are encouraging them to think about it in a holistic way rather than take one question at a time.
Great, Sundar. I'll move on to the next slide. Can you hear me okay, Sundar?
Yes, Peter.
Very good. Sundar, thanks for sharing all of those leading practices on reentry and reimagine. We'll continue the conversation in looking at what we're seeing across many leading companies. Sundar and I and our team, we have over 40 client engagements underway. And these are some of the key themes that we're seeing at the senior executive C-suite levels within these leading organizations. Many of our clients are looking at new ways of working for reentry and the return to work migration. Social distancing and social distancing planning in the workplace is being activated and implemented. As Sundar mentioned, we're seeing workplace mobility and potential work from home hybrid solutions So perhaps some employees might work from home 2 days a week, come back to the office 3 days a week, or every other week. We're working on a range of options in terms of rotational planning. We're also seeing a lot of C-suite and CEO and COO, CFO, CHRO engagement to really look beyond COVID-19. So as we look at pre-COVID up until January 2020, we look at the COVID duration, at least from January 2020 until probably January 2022 actually, and then the post-COVID longer-term strategies as we look out to 2025, and what does that mean from a real estate and workplace and business planning perspective. So we're looking to optimize those future real estate portfolios. We are looking in many cases with some clients to close small sites. Sundar and I have one client where we're going to close all sites less than 25,000 square feet. And we're also going to expand for another client from urban centers to more suburban sites, because this client is concerned about mass transit in New York, in Chicago, in Tokyo, and London. And so the suburban site offerings with a commute by automobile is being considered as part of that reimagined portfolio strategy. We're seeing a great deal of focus on long-term employee health and wellness and well-being, and indoor air quality from our work with Harvard University and other research groups is now becoming a priority. And in this time of recession, which could be a prolonged recession, we are looking at portfolio occupancy cost reduction by as much as 10 to 30% in combination with all of the other elements that I've just described and Sundar has described in his content review. So as we look at reimagination against this length and duration journey that Sundar mentioned, if you look at the diagram on the right, as we look at the depth and length of the disruption over time, and then with the horizontal y-axis, the extent of business model disruption, we're going to see potentially the shaping of entirely new business models. And this is from our work with McKinsey. We have other work with PricewaterhouseCoopers, Accenture, and Deloitte that all point to business transformation being accelerated as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the reimagination opportunities to really rethink our business models for the longer term. So the longer that we have COVID with us, and there are those who think we could have a pharmaceutical intervention by early 21. We have other research projections to predict, a 2023 or 25 pharmaceutical intervention at best. But whether it's, 2021 or 2023 or 2025, we will see new business transformation opportunities emerge, and we will see new opportunities to sort of rethink corporate real estate and rethink the workplace and new ways of working. So on this next slide is an example from one of our clients where we're developing various workplace continuity scenarios. And here again, on the y-axis, we're focused on what are the external environmental factors. So in particular, I'd like everyone to focus on that transmission rate factor. When a country, a city, a state, a community has a transmission rate greater than 1, that is a very negative transmission rate, that more than one person to another person will transmit the virus. As we go down that y-axis and we get to a transmission rate below 0.5, that is a much more acceptable transmission rate. And this chart is showing the various work from home strategies. So we're having scenario plans with some clients with low transmission rates within their geographies, where they have few high-risk employees. For those clients, we're looking at a 40% work from home. But for those countries, states, cities, regions where the transmission rate is still greater than 1 or equal to 1, we're seeing 100% work from home and current lockdown and social distancing and shelter-in-place strategies. So this is a matrix by which we help our clients develop various scenarios. And as these transmission rates fluctuate, which they may over time, Sundar and I and our research team are concerned about a second surge potentially in the fall. We have to be prepared with potential re-exit and re-entry scenarios across multiple regions and geographies. So for the longer term, and this is a diagram that Sundar and our team, we've actually had for the last several years in terms of long-term workplace ecosystem solutions. Part of reimagination will look at what business processes and functions might be performed remotely for the longer term, and how do we provide alternative workplace solutions and new technology tools to support remote working at scale, and what hybrid solutions might be developed. So in 2024, per the diagram on the right, 2025, we could have a world where co-working, work from home, satellite options, virtual reality, actually the hotels in New York and our major urban centers are all offering workspace now by the hour, as an example. And we're seeing actually Airbnb and Globe and the residential offerings also come into workplace offerings by the hour. We could see a very different remote work and workplace ecosystem environment in the future. And where people work may require and may enable greater flexibility. So the reason to come into an office environment will be for socialization, for collaboration, for mentoring. But again, per my earlier comments, with some clients, we're looking at a 3-day a week in the office, 2 days a week at a co-working site or work from home or other locations. And so from our actually research, and we've been quoted in the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times and other periodicals, we may see a workplace ecosystem evolve for the longer term that will really change the nature and shape of corporate real estate and commercial real estate as we know it today. So more to come on that, and we'll be glad to provide updates. In addition to the changing commercial corporate real estate ecosystem evolution, Sundar and I and our team have been very involved in reimagining the enterprise of the future. So if we think about this as, again, a large ecosystem where we've got the adaptive, digital, responsive, and resilient enterprise goals at the highest level, and then on the left are these digital elastic workplace ecosystems from our work with Accenture. So workflows and workforce and talent and digital workplace, including AI, robotics, and cloud. All of that's happening in a digital workplace environment, if you will. And then on the right is the physical environment, the physical workspace, buildings becoming intelligent, sustainable, smart, safety will be a key, portfolios becoming optimized, resilient, data-driven. So these two worlds are coming together, and all of this is built upon a company's brand, culture, values, and health. These 4 key areas are from our work with Microsoft and Accenture and a number of other clients, where we need to orchestrate the digital realm and the physical realm together. And all of this will be part of this next generation enterprise of the future, and an opportunity to reimagine how we work and how we organize our space and how we organize our lives, actually. I'd like to share just a high-level case study with everyone. This is from a global client where we worked with the CEO, CFO. This is a 35,000-person technology firm. And per Sundar's earlier comments, we developed an integrated approach in a program office to rethink 15 million square feet globally. And our guiding principles were to improve talent and workforce strategy, focus on human health and experience. We did employ workplace mobility and a workplace ecosystem, including work from home. This client has a 3-year time frame for global transformation, and we're going to look at portfolio site consolidation, workplace mobility solutions, improving talent. We'll reduce the overall size of the portfolio by 40%, and we'll reduce the run rate annual cost by 30%. And we characterize this client case study as a reimagined integration program. And so this is an example of what we're seeing across industry sectors, across the life sciences sector, actually even across the energy sector, which is probably near and dear to you folks in Houston. We're seeing it across the financial services sector. So again, how do we reimagine the portfolio, optimize real estate, and create a better long-term solution for our clients? So with that, Matt, I'd like to conclude and thank everyone for joining us today. We're glad to take any questions, and I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Awesome. Appreciate you running through things. I haven't seen really any questions, but I mean, I had a question. I typed it in there. Y'all alluded to, you had one client, maybe multiple clients that has been taken to court or sued by employees. And I know you may not be able to answer this directly, but I guess I'm having a hard time understanding, and I just assume there's going to be another pandemic of lawsuits as people go back to work and advantageous attorneys might attack. But can you speak to my question about, how liable could an employer potentially be if they check all the boxes, so to speak, and then still have an employee fall ill, and how that might play out?
Yeah. Sundar, you want to tackle that, and I'll tag on?
Right. Sure. I think at some point, initially, until we have a better handle on this, most companies have been cautious in who they consider essential employees. So who is essential is not necessarily are you essential to the company. It is more of, are you essential to be in the office? Can you not do your work from home? So I'll give you a case in point example of a biotech company, and the scientists are working on developing a vaccine for COVID. And you want to protect that scientist because that scientist is extremely essential, not only to the company and to the world. And if there is a accounts payable person, nothing wrong. That accounts payable person, accounts receivable person is very important to the company. But by bringing that person, you're putting that person who doesn't really need to be in the office at risk. And more importantly, somebody that is essential to be in the office, putting that person at risk as well. In terms of what the legal issues of that, different companies, it also depends on the employee culture. It depends on, we have had situations where it is very difficult to say that a person contracted COVID in the office, because there are lots of other places one could go. They could have gotten the disease from somewhere else, all of that. So it's very difficult to prove, but that has not stopped. In some cases, we know 2-3 examples where employees have taken their companies to court, and there are some legal exposure. But in general, it is not as much as you would think, and because it is not very easy to prove that they contracted COVID in the specifics in the office or the source of where they got that from.
Yeah, and this is Peter, I'll just build on that. We had a large telecommunications company where the CEO didn't really believe that COVID and the coronavirus was a real risk and demanded that everyone come back to the office. Now, this is a 100,000 person company, and there were some objectives, and there was a number of folks, especially we've seen this on a couple of instances that were in the call center environment, in the interior environment where you have close proximity, or any environment in the interiors where you have close proximity, that is your greatest risk. So in March, all these folks started coming back, in particular to these call center and operational centers, and over 400 people became ill in various clusters with COVID. Those 400 folks took a class action legal suit against that company and against the CEO personally. And what's interesting, that case is now going to court. And to Sundar's point, at an individual level, it's difficult to prove, contraction of COVID. But at a cluster and a group level, it's quite easy to prove if you have clusters of folks who become ill from one another, especially in call center and operational environments. And that's a $300 million suit against this company and against their CEO personally. And I think the Trump administration right now is trying to look at, with the Justice Department, potential, changes to mitigate the risk of legal action. However, given OSHA rules and given the contagious nature of COVID, I think if there are massive infections within the workplace, we will see, continued litigation risk. And this is another reason why, all employers need to be, I think, very careful and thoughtful about their reentry planning and policies. I'll also mention there's a significant fear factor. So I'm based in New York, but we're seeing even in Chicago, San Francisco, perhaps other areas, not sure about Houston, but one CEO expected 20% of his employees to come back into the office starting here the first week of June. And they had a voluntary, offering, you could volunteer to come back in. Well, less than 4% volunteered to come back in because they're fearful. And they're fearful of getting sick from work. They're fearful of taking mass transit. They're fearful of just socially, being engaged in, normal day-to-day work activities. So as Sundar mentioned, the final decision is really up to the employee. And until we have some sort of pharmaceutical intervention or we have good workplace interventions, companies are quite fearful, depending upon the geography and location and company, as to their confidence level about coming back to work. And then I will mention we have several large clients who have a majority or a good majority of 10 or 15% of their employees back to work, and people wearing a mask all day in the office, at a temperature setting of 75 or 78 degrees, working on a large monitor in the office environment, sitting 6 to 8 feet apart from all of your colleagues, not being able to get coffee, not being able to get lunch, not being able to communicate and collaborate or to be in conference rooms. It's not such a comfortable setting for a majority of those who are coming back in, and that will also require some time and change management and other interventions to give people the comfort and confidence about returning to work with all of the various COVID social distancing and environmental protocols that we are putting into place with a number of our clients. So glad, Matt, to provide more context around all of that. But it's not so simple to re-enter. It does require a thoughtful approach, and we would advise all organizations to be thoughtful and to be considerate of their employee safety and wellness, and to be mindful of this litigation risk that we just shared with you.
Okay, great, thank you. One other question that came in was, long term, even with the vaccine, do you guys have any idea, based on your conversations with all your clients, what percentage just might always be work from home moving forward?
Yeah, Sundar?
I think that will be a speculative answer, really, to give today. There are many factors that would influence that. One is the nature of the business, the culture of the organization, how long can we do this? This is still an experiment in a way, right? So when you think about this, as of March, when people started to go home and almost 90% of the people work from home, the people were expecting a productivity drop, but looks like companies did well. Employees did well. The productivity seemed to have, in some cases, even improved. But we still don't know what it will be long term. If, from an employee health standpoint, people are social animals. People like to be with other people. There is a purpose for why people come to the office, for socialization, for innovation, for building teams, and better teams provide better contribution to the company, a lot of things. Then it will also depend on, does the work allow for people to be productive if they're working from home? What will be the talent strategy? Like I said, if you look at those 15 questions, the tiles that I showed to show, we have to answer all these questions so that we can get to the reimagined world. This is a great example of it. If you take just one question, it has domino effect on other questions in terms of what happens to your work process, what happens to your talent strategy. If you can say 40% of the workforce can work from home, does it matter if that work from home employee is down the street or in the next city or in the next country? Then it kind of changes your whole talent strategy from there on. So I think We have not, if you look at it from a best case scenario, I don't think there is one best case scenario. I would encourage companies to look at it from a conservative, moderate, progressive kind of bookends of what is possible, and look at their condition, their business process, their culture, their vision, and come up with what is the best case scenario for them.
Yeah, I would agree with, it's Peter, I would agree with Sundar's comments. And, I'll just share with everyone in the audience that we may be looking at a 4-day work week. And from our work with Microsoft as an example, Microsoft has very successfully implemented a 4-day work week. So as we see post-COVID, and for a number of clients, we're looking at, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025 horizons, there could be a very interesting change in terms of the hours that we work, where we work, and even how do we work. And so with advanced automation, we're going to see a lot of routinized work, go towards automation and those AI, robotic process automation type platforms. That is already accelerating in the age of COVID. So we're going to see more human to machine work. We could see a 4-day work week. And if you could imagine a 4-day work week, maybe you'd go into an office environment 2 of those days, and then 1 of those days you'd work from a co-working site or a client site, and then 1 of those days you could work from home. Or you could divide up the day. You go to meetings and collaborative activities in the morning to noon, have lunch with colleagues, and then work from home the remainder of the day. We have a technology client in Silicon Valley pre-COVID. They had already shortened their workday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. because of the heavy traffic getting into their headquarters in Silicon Valley. And they found that the majority of their employees could hold their meetings from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then people were able to leave at 2 p.m., be with their family for a period of time, and then go back to work online post, 5, 6 p.m. till 10, 11, what have you. So I think you're going to see a shift due to COVID, but it was already occurring pre-COVID in our ways of working, our commute patterns. The next generation, Gen Z in particular, and Gen Y are very concerned about sustainability, concerned about energy management. We found through all of our research that if you commute more than 75 minutes a day in an automobile, there are severe health risks over time, especially over 15-year, 20-year commuting durations. So I think we're going to see some changes that were already underway, but maybe accelerated with COVID. And from all the announcements, I don't think we're going to see 100% work from home by 100% of the employees 100% of the time. But I do not think we will go back to 5 days a week or 7 days a week commuting to the office. And at that end of the spectrum, I think those days are over. And per Sundar's comments, I think we'll see a range of hybrid mobility, including work from home, including co-working, which will eventually come back. And in 2025, I think we'll have a very different workplace ecosystem. And those landlords in particular, and I work with a number of large real estate investment and landlord firms, those landlords that are positioning their assets for that 2025 future state with health and wellness in mind, with sustainability in mind, with potentially good amenities and good locational attributes, I think you'll see some really big winners in terms of building location and commercial real estate investments by 2025. Those, landlords and owners that are not positioned with the latest technologies, that do not prioritize health and wellness, sustainability, and some of these other important, elements may not be as successful in that longer term journey. And I would say, I would have said those same criteria and stated those same criteria in January as I am today in June, because I think the future of corporate real estate, commercial real estate needs to transform, and our buildings need to be smarter, more intelligent, more sustainable, and more human, if you will, for the workforce of the future. So thank to whomever asked that great question, and glad to provide, more context as may be helpful.
Awesome. I think we probably have time for one more question. And one of them was, what opportunities, in commercial real estate are going to exist because of this. You kind of answered that based on location and health-focused type assets. And I guess tying into that question, another question was, and it's kind of a personal question. A lot of people, I mean, we're in the summer now, schools are kind of over, what was supposed to be school, work at home a lot, or virtual schooling, but a lot of places aren't going to reopen in August. It doesn't seem like, at least schools aren't going to open in earnest with full attendance. How do you see employees, employers coping with kids? I mean, are people going to be bringing kids to work? Are there going to be certain specific areas at offices for daycare? How would you think that's going to shake out?
Sundar, you want to try that?
Yeah. If you think about the early question about litigation and legal risk of employees coming to work, adding children in the mix is probably that much more difficult. I'm not saying that it may not happen, but I have not seen an example where daycare has opened in any office. We don't know what will happen in the future, but that we have not seen. The fact that about school, daycare, and parents' responsibility at home versus work, I think all of that will definitely be there. I want to add one more comment to the previous question on the CRE responsibility and the role of CRE. Corporate real estate leaders solving real estate problems, I think those days are in the past. The goal of, or the role of corporate real estate is to solve business problems using corporate real estate expertise. And that is the fundamental opportunity here for CRE leaders to elevate their role within their organizations to enable enterprise solutions using real estate expertise. And that is the greatest opportunity for CRE.
Yep, Sundar, well said. And this is Peter. I'll just build on the child care challenge, which I think could be a pretty significant challenge. And I'll just share what we're seeing with a couple of innovative companies where they're allowing, for instance, one spouse to potentially come back to the office and, have a very flexible schedule. So to allow then for the other partner of that, family to take care of the children. And we are seeing some interesting job sharing and flex scheduling, arrangements. I mean, Sundar and I have a couple of colleagues in our organization where, the wife will start work from, 6 a.m. until 12 noon, and then she is off work, and the husband takes over in the afternoon as a matter of flex scheduling to accommodate, for childcare. And we as JLL, we're actually supporting that type of flex scheduling because it's important for, families to be able to take care of their children. We also are seeing, at least here in New York, we are seeing some nursery services come about. And I think we're going to see this in a host of areas. We're seeing it in the hospitality and the retail industry where there will be safe zones. And these are, well tested and highly provisioned safety zones for children in terms of a daycare solution. And those zones will have to have, and those facilities and those providers will have to have very high standards to ensure that those children are safe, from any viral contagion, as we move forward here. And I think there'll be a premium for those types of services, but we are seeing those services emerge. We're also seeing, in the hospitality sector and the retail sector, very safe, secure, zoning and deep cleaning and provisioning around, what was being termed sort of a safe facility. And we may see that extend to childcare. I would agree with Sundar's comment. I don't think we'll see children in the workplace because of the risk issues and other issues, but we could see some new capabilities. And clients, a couple of companies are offering stipends for, additional child care capabilities for those parents, given the schooling schedules that have now been elongated in some cases into, September or not even starting until 2021. So I think the child care challenge will continue, and I think we may see some very innovative solutions, flexible solutions, and educational solutions that will try to manage in what, again, is a very challenging environment for parents in taking care of their children and ensuring their children are educated and ensuring that their children are safe. So again, thanks to your audience for that great question.
Awesome. Well, good feedback, good insight. And thanks a lot, guys. Peter, Sundar, we're kind of at the hour mark here, so I'll close things out. Really appreciate y'all giving us your time and expertise. And yeah, certainly will be very interesting to see how things play out and how adaptive everybody is over the coming months. So best to you guys and best to everyone on the call. Thanks for joining, and we'll look forward to catching up again soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you again,
Thanks.
Matt and company.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye now.